I didn't curse. I didn't slam a single door. I walked into that kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the table like I had all the time in the world. And that right there, that stillness, was the thing that scared my son-in-law more than anything I could have said. But I'm getting ahead of myself, friend. Let me take you back to where this really started. My name is Clarence Elwood Whitfield. I am 64 years old, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, the second son of a Pullman porter and a school teacher who truly believed, that dignity was not something the world gave you. It was something you built, brick by brick, with your own two hands, over a lifetime of early mornings and late nights, and choices that nobody ever sees you make. My parents taught me that, and I spent 40 years trying to live it. I retired 3 years ago from a career in commercial real estate development. I wasn't the richest man in the room, but I had built something real. I owned the house my wife and I lived in outright. I had investments, a small portfolio, and a retirement account that meant neither one of us would ever have to ask anyone for anything. That mattered to me. Coming from where I came from, financial independence wasn't just a goal, it was the whole point. My wife's name is Rosalie. Rosalie Ann Whitfield. Nay, Cooper. We have been married for 39 years this coming April, and I want you to understand something before we go any further. Rosalie is not a soft woman. She is not someone who complains or falls apart easily. She raised our daughter Denise through 2 cross-country moves, a year when I was working 16-hour days and barely home, a cancer scare in 2009 that she handled with more grace than I ever could have. Rosalie is the kind of woman who prays in the morning, keeps her house immaculate, and still sends birthday cards in the mail because she believes people deserve to feel remembered. She is the best person I have ever known, and what happened to her in the last 18 months of her life in that house is something I will carry with me until I draw my last breath. Our daughter Denise is 41 years old. She went to Spelman, graduated with honors, came home with a degree in business administration, and a boyfriend nobody in our family had ever met before that summer. His name was Marcus Deshawn Pryor. And if I am being honest with you, I want to tell you that my first instinct about Marcus Pryor was correct, and I ignored it. And that is the part of this story I have to live with. He was charming. I will give him that. He shook my hand firmly, called me sir, complimented Rosalie's cooking 3 times at Sunday dinner. He had a job in finance, mid-level. Nothing spectacular, but steady. He drove a nice car. Dressed well. Denise looked at him like he hung the moon, and so I told myself that my unease was just a father's natural suspicion of any man who wanted to take his daughter's time and attention. I talked myself out of what I knew. They married in 2019. We paid for the wedding, $42,000 at a venue outside of Charlotte. We were happy to do it, Rosalie cried when Denise came down the aisle. I held it together until I saw Rosalie cry, and then I didn't hold it together at all. When they came to us in the fall of 2022 and said they wanted to buy a house but were having trouble with financing, we didn't hesitate. Rosalie and I discussed it for one evening, prayed over it, and agreed. We co-signed on the mortgage for a 4-bedroom home in Stone Mountain, $280,000. We were not co-signers in name only. We put down $60,000 of the down payment ourselves. We told them it was a gift. We meant it as love. What I did not understand then, what I understand completely now, is that some people receive love as an opportunity. My trouble with my left hip started in early 2023. 2 surgeries within 8 months. And after the second one, my doctor was clear that I needed extended rehabilitation and limited travel for at least 6 months. That meant Rosalie and I had a decision to make. Our house in Atlanta was a 2-story, and the master bedroom was upstairs. The physical therapy I needed 3 times a week was best done at a facility 40 minutes north of Atlanta. Staying at home alone while Rosalie managed everything by herself was not a realistic option. It was Marcus who suggested it first. He called me on a Tuesday night. Denise was on the phone too, and he said, "Dad, why don't you and Mama Rosalie just come stay with us for a while? We've got the space. You shouldn't be doing all of that traveling back and forth. Let us take care of y'all for once." I looked at Rosalie. She looked at me. She smiled, that quiet smile she has, the one that means she is moved but doesn't want to show it too much. We moved in on a Saturday in March. For the first 3 weeks, everything was fine. I want to be accurate about that. Denise cooked on weekends. Marcus helped me to the car for my therapy appointments without being asked. Rosalie settled into the routine of the house, helped with groceries, kept herself useful the way she always does because that is who she is. She cannot be somewhere without contributing to it. It was so gradual, friend. That is the thing I need you to understand. It did not happen all at once. If it had happened all at once, I would have seen it clearly. But it came in layers, like weather changing, each day a little colder than the one before, until you realize you are wearing a coat and you cannot remember when you put it on. The first thing I noticed was the groceries. Rosalie mentioned casually that she had offered to go to the store, and Marcus had given her a list, not suggested a list, given her one. I didn't say anything. I filed it. Then it was the laundry. I came out of my room one afternoon and saw Rosalie folding a basket of clothes in the hallway. I assumed it was ours. When I looked closer, I saw Marcus's shirts, his undershirts, his dress socks arranged in pairs. I asked Rosalie quietly that evening. She said Marcus had asked her if she wouldn't mind since she was doing laundry anyway. She said it the way she says things, she has already decided not to make a big deal about. I was still in physical therapy. I was still dependent on a walker for half of each day. My ability to do something about what I was seeing was limited, and Marcus seemed to understand that. Looking back, I believe he understood it very well. By the second month, Rosalie was cooking every night, not because she wanted to. Because Marcus had begun making comments at dinner, small ones, casual ones, about how he had a long day, how Denise was tired from work, how it was just easier if Mama Rosalie handled the kitchen since she was home anyway. And Rosalie, because she is who she is, because she was raised to be useful, because she did not want to cause friction in her daughter's home. Rosalie handled the kitchen. I started watching my daughter during those dinners. I watched to see if she noticed. I watched to see if she said anything. I watched to see if there was any discomfort on her face when her husband called her mother into the kitchen to bring him a second plate while he sat at the table scrolling through his phone. Denise noticed. I know she noticed. And she said nothing. That silence from my daughter, that is the wound that has not healed. Not Marcus. Marcus is what he is. But Denise is my blood. Denise sat at that table and ate the food her mother cooked, and accepted the life Marcus had arranged and chose every single day to say nothing. By the third month, I no longer needed the walker full-time. My therapist was pleased with my progress. What she did not know was that part of my motivation to recover faster was fear. Fear of what I was watching happen to my wife in that house, and the knowledge that, as long as I was dependent, there was very little I could do about it. I started observing more carefully. Not confrontationally carefully. I am a man who spent decades in rooms where deals were made and unmade by men who understood that information is power, and that the most dangerous person in any negotiation is the one who appears to have no leverage. Marcus had begun speaking to Rosalie in a tone that I can only describe as dismissive. Not loud, not threatening, just flat. The way you speak to someone whose presence you have decided is functional rather than meaningful. He would give her instructions what to prepare for dinner when his colleagues were coming over on Friday, which rooms needed to be cleaned before his mother visited, whether she had remembered to pick up his dry cleaning when she went out that afternoon. Not asked. Told. And when his colleagues came over that Friday evening, 7 people, nice enough, dressed well, drinks in hand, Marcus introduced everyone in the room. He introduced Denise as his wife. He introduced 2 of his work friends by name and title. He said nothing about the woman who had spent all day in the kitchen preparing the food those people were eating. When one of his colleagues walked into the kitchen and asked, very politely, if she could get a glass of water, Marcus said without looking up from his conversation, "That's Rosalie. She'll get it for you. She takes care of things around here." I was sitting in the doorway of the living room in my chair. I saw Rosalie's face when he said it. There is a look a woman gets when she has been reduced in public. When something true about how she is regarded has been spoken out loud by someone who does not understand or does not care that she is a person, it is not anger, exactly. It is a kind of stillness that comes from absorbing something too large to respond to in the moment. I have seen Rosalie handle hard things before. I have seen her handle them with grace and without complaint. But I had never seen that look on her face. And sitting in that doorway, Watching the party continue around her as she filled a glass of water for a stranger in her daughter's kitchen, I made a decision. I did not say a word that night. I smiled at Marcus's colleagues. I thanked them for coming. I went to bed at 9:30, and I lay there in the dark next to Rosalie, who said she was fine, and I listened to her breathing until it slowed into sleep. And then I started making calls. The first call was to my attorney, a man named Gerald Osei, who has handled my affairs for 22 years and who does not waste words. I told him I needed to review the co-signing arrangement on the Stone Mountain property. I told him I wanted to understand every legal option available to me. Gerald listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Clarence, I'll have something for you by Wednesday." The second call was to my financial advisor. I asked him to prepare a full accounting of every dollar Rosalie and I had contributed to Marcus and Denise's lives over the past 4 years. The wedding, the down payment, the monthly contributions we had been making to what Marcus called their household fund. Contributions we had been sending since the surgery because we did not want to feel like a burden. That number, when it came back to me, was $217,000. I want you to sit with that for a moment, friend. $217,000. And the man who received it was now directing my wife to iron his shirts. The third call I made was to my brother Raymond, who lives in Birmingham and who has known me for 64 years, and who said, when I told him what was happening, "Clarence, what took you so long?" It took me another 3 weeks. I want to be honest with you about that. It took me 3 more weeks because I was still hoping my daughter would do something. Some part of me, the father part, the part that remembers Denise at 7 years old falling asleep in my lap during church, was still waiting for her to step in, to say something to her husband, to choose her mother. The moment that ended my waiting happened on a Thursday afternoon. I had been at physical therapy and came home an hour earlier than expected. I came through the side door quietly because the front steps were still hard on my hip. I could hear voices in the kitchen. Marcus was home, which was unusual for a Thursday afternoon. I heard Rosalie's voice quiet, careful. I heard Marcus's voice, the flat, instructional tone I had come to know very well. I stood in the hallway and I listened. He was telling her that the guest bathroom wasn't clean enough, that he had looked at it before his call this morning and it was not up to standard. He used those words, not up to standard. He told her that when he had people over, the house needed to reflect a certain level. He told her that if she wasn't able to keep up with what was needed, he would need to think about whether this arrangement was still working. Whether this arrangement was still working. My wife, in my daughter's house, being told by a 43-year-old man that her living arrangement was conditional on the cleanliness of his guest bathroom, I walked into that kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap. I sat down at the table across from Marcus, and I looked at him. Not with anger, with something much quieter than anger. He said, "Clarence," he stopped. He tried to start again. I said, "Marcus, I need you to finish what you were saying." He didn't finish what he was saying. I said, "I came in through the side door. I heard everything. So, I need you to look me in the eyes right now and finish your sentence." He did not look me in the eyes. He looked at the table. He said something about how he didn't mean anything by it. I said, "I know you didn't mean anything by it. That's what concerns me." I told Rosalie to go sit in the living room. She looked at me for a moment, that look that means she wants to argue but knows I am right. Then she went. I sat with Marcus at that kitchen table for 45 minutes. I did not raise my voice once. I told him what I had observed over the preceding 3 months. I was specific. I named dates. I described incidents in detail. I told him about the dry cleaning and the grocery lists and the dinner party, and the way he had introduced my wife to his colleagues. I watched his face move through several expressions, defensiveness, then confusion, then something approaching the early stages of real understanding. And then I told him about the phone calls I had made. I told him that Gerald Osei had reviewed our co-signing arrangement, and that there were conditions in that agreement, conditions that Marcus had signed his name to in 2022, that gave me certain rights regarding the danced agreement, property, in the event of what the document called material. Breach of good faith conduct by either party. I told him that $217,000 of support from Rosalie and me had been documented. I told him that the monthly household contributions we had been sending had been formally reclassified, on paper, as a loan, and that the promissory note reflecting that reclassification had been prepared by Gerald's office and was ready for signature. Marcus looked up from the table. I said, "You have 30 days to decide what you want to do with that information, but I want to be very clear about one thing right now. This arrangement, your word, Marcus, not mine. This arrangement changes today. Today, my wife cooks when she wants to cook. She cleans what she chooses to clean. She does not receive instructions in this house or any other house. And if I come home early one more time and hear what I heard this afternoon, we will not be sitting at a kitchen table having a conversation. We will be sitting in Gerald Osei's office reviewing documents." He said he understood. I said I needed him to be more specific. He said, "Yes, sir, I understand." That was all I needed. When Denise came home that evening, I asked her to sit with me on the back porch. Just the two of us. I want to tell you that this was the hardest conversation of my life. Harder than the conversation with Marcus. Because Marcus is a man I had no deep relationship with. Denise is my daughter. I looked at her at that porch table, and I saw every version of her I had ever known. The 7-year-old, and the teenager, and the Spelman graduate, and the bride in white. And I told her what her mother's face looked like at that dinner party. I told her that I had watched her, Denise. I had watched her notice what was happening and say nothing. I told her that a woman could make many mistakes in her life and be forgiven for them. But there is a category of silence that is not neutral. There is a silence that is its own kind of choice. And her silence in that house every day for 3 months, while her mother folded Marcus's shirts and cleaned Marcus's bathrooms and served Marcus's guests, that silence was a choice. And she was going to need to reckon with that, Denise cried. I let her cry. I did not hold her hand. I want to be honest about that. I loved my daughter too much to comfort her out of the discomfort she needed to sit in. I told her that we were not going anywhere immediately. I told her that Rosalie and I would stay until my recovery was fully complete, because I was not going to disrupt Rosalie's life twice over a man who was not worth it. But I told her that from this day forward, certain things in that house were going to be different, and that after we left, the nature of our relationship, mine, Rosalie's, and hers, was going to be something we would have to rebuild from the ground up, if she wanted to rebuild it. She said, "Daddy, I'm so sorry." I said, "I know you are, baby. But your mother is the one who needs to hear that." The next 4 weeks were different. I will not pretend they were comfortable. There is a particular tension that lives in a house where something true has been said out loud and cannot be taken back. But Marcus's tone changed. Rosalie moved through that house differently, not with triumph, not with visible relief, but with a quiet reoccupation of her own dignity that was something to witness. She and Denise had a conversation I was not present for. Rosalie told me afterward only that it was a long one and that Denise had said things that needed to be said. I did not ask for details. That conversation belonged to them. We moved back to Atlanta in June. I had found a single-story home in Decatur, everything on one level, close to our church, close to the city, manageable for us both as we get older. Rosalie walked through it the day I took her to see it, and she stood in the kitchen for a long time without saying anything. Then she turned around and said, "Clarence, this is exactly right." I knew what she meant. The promissory note for the loan was signed by Marcus in April. Gerald has it on file. The monthly household contributions stopped the day we left Stone Mountain. Marcus and Denise are managing their mortgage without our support. I will tell you plainly, they are struggling. But that is not cruelty on my part. That is what it looks like when people live within their own actual means, which is a thing Rosalie and I decided they needed to learn how to do. Denise calls on Sundays now, every Sunday without fail. She and Rosalie talk for a long time. I get on the phone for a few minutes at the end. We are careful with each other still. We are finding our way back. I believe we will find it, because Denise is not a bad person. I believe she got lost. Lost in a man. Lost in a life. Lost in the comfort of looking away. And I believe she knows that now, in a way she cannot unknow. As for Marcus, I will tell you what I told Raymond when he asked me if I was done with him. I said, "Raymond, I don't spend time on men who have shown me who they are. I paid attention, I took notes, and I acted accordingly. That's all there is to it." I want to say one more thing before I let you go, friend, because I think about this a lot. I think about all the Rosalies out there, the mothers and the grandmothers, and the women who built things quietly and gave generously, and found themselves, somehow, at the end of all of that giving, being spoken to, like staff. And I think about all the Clarences, the men who saw something happening to someone they loved and moved too slowly because they wanted to believe the best about people. Here is what I know now that I wish I had known sooner. Love is not the same thing as access. Giving someone everything you have built does not make them worthy of it, and it does not give them the right to diminish the people who built it. Family is not an obligation to accept whatever a person chooses to do within that category. And dignity, the thing my mother and father built into me, brick by brick, dignity is not negotiable. Not at 64, not at 84, not ever. Take care of the people who love you, friend. Take real care of them. And if someone in your life is not doing that, if someone is allowing the person you love most in this world to be reduced day by day, in a house you helped pay for, don't wait. Don't wait for the right moment. Don't wait until you can walk without a walker. Pour yourself a glass of water. Sit down at the table and let them see your face. When someone you love is being diminished, the most powerful thing you can do is not the loudest thing, it's the most deliberate. Clarence didn't win by raising his voice. He won by paying attention, keeping records, and refusing to let comfort talk him out of what he already knew. Protect the people who love you quietly, before the quiet becomes permanent. A small note for you, friend. This story was created and fictionalized by AI, crafted to bring you a meaningful moment of entertainment while leaving something warm and true behind.